I used this silicone coaster mold with its wonderful relief to create a floral coaster with mica powder and caviar beads. The raised petal detail at almost a millimeter thick shows up nicely even without color. The center is also highlighted, so a flat color might be too overpowering. Instead, a textured material like caviar beads will work better. I have used these before to create a grainy flower center, and they do it well without making the coaster too shiny. I'll be using some mica pigment for the base color of the flower and a little white mica pigment and alcohol ink to add texture to the petals. With all our material ready, let's begin crafting. For this project, I'm using a 2:1 resin mix, but a 1:1 mix would have worked just as well. When mixing the resin, I prefer to go slow, occasionally scraping the sides to ensure an even mix. After mixing, I leave the resin to degas for about 15 minutes before pouring. I'm going to try a new technique today, piping resin. I'll prop the piping bag up in this container to make it easier to fill. The resin mix consists of white mica pigment and white alcohol ink. I will degas the mixture for 5 minutes before pouring it into the bag. Now, before mixing the base color of the petals, I'll pour the resin into the coaster. I'll be using two shades, a darker pink along the edge and a lighter shade towards the center. The mix is not very dense and will allow light to pass through, which brings out the shimmer of the mica pigments. After pouring, I'll set this aside to let any trapped air escape. Now comes a very important and often overlooked step, the toothpick run. The raised edge on this mold, while adding visual interest, is the main challenge. It has an extensive edge and is a hot spot for air pockets. Getting rid of the bubbles at this stage is absolutely crucial for the final result. It's a laborious process, but it must be done. I'll add the caviar beads to the center, moving them around the raised portions. When the coaster is cured, the backgrounds will show through these areas, creating a difference in color. I had hoped to pour this elegantly, but that ship has sailed. The pigments should start moving towards the center, and I expect the two layers to blend into a smooth gradient. Next, it's time to add our white blooming pigment. I'm not attempting a full bloom, but rather getting a feel of how the resin flows while piping. This will also break the monochromatic feel of the petals. This mold might be inspired by cherry blossoms. While my colors are similar to the real flower, my proportions are not. I think cherry blossoms have more white than pink, while this design has the opposite. I'll use the white pigment to observe how the piped resin spreads and blooms before I try a full piped resin bloom. Now for the toothpick swirls. For me, this is one of the most satisfying part of working with resin and pigments or alcohol inks. I often get carried away though and have even ruined projects because I couldn't stop swirling. Let's check on our cured coaster. The color is so much lighter than when we started the mix. It looks a little orange, which might be due to the yellowish morning sunlight though. Just look at these blooms. It's a shame that they're on the other side as the pigment has settled and will possibly hide them. But I had only done these white blooms for testing, so it's perfectly fine. The layering is so nice. The color is soft and the white is visible from this side thanks to the translucency. You can also see a slight gradient from the darker color on the outside to the lighter inside. This is looking fantastic. So now let's prepare the base. I'm going to use a dark brick red background because I want some contrast. I feel that with the white inclusions, a dark background would work best. Otherwise, the popping white design would just disappear. This is a dirty mix with some clusters, but that's okay. I'll eventually work them out with my stirring stick. Pigment mixes can be tricky to work with, but they look so amazing in the end. Since the center of the bloom is already a little white, I'm going to add a little more white to this background to create a gradient of lightness towards the center. I'm fascinated that even though there was hardly any resin left in the container, the mix came out so colored. I want it to be a little lighter, so I'll add another round of resin pigment mix to the center. I think that looks perfect. Now the resin will move and do its thing, so let's set it aside and let it cure. I came back after a couple of hours and tried to swirl because why not? I'm sure these lines will disappear eventually, but I could not help it. My swirls are gone, but my coaster has cured and the shimmer is beautiful. The color looks so nice and the gradient has come out perfectly. The light color in the center makes a lovely contrast. I am surprised that the color has become so orange. It didn't look like that before. Maybe the base color has a bit of orange pigment, or maybe it's some sort of illusion which I don't get. Let's get this baby out of the mold. It's a little bendy and not coming out easily because of the relief, but it came out pretty clean. I am very glad to see that no pigments were left anywhere, which means that the resin mix was perfect and bubble free. Look at that layering, it is fantastic, and the camera can't even capture the shimmer of these colors. The lighter color possibly had a little more of white shimmering pigments, which has come out as a layer. The bloom in the center is creating a texture of its own, but it's not a smooth gradient. It's as if the resin broke into little blobs. This gives it a special quality and a fantastic 3D effect. The center is fine. The caviar beads were a good choice because my eyes aren't drawn to them at all. The reflection shows how the relief has been carved in. I had thought of filling it with acrylic color to highlight it, but I don't believe it is necessary because this is quite elegant. The coaster has a slight translucency and it looks really lovely. This has turned out quite differently than I expected, but the subtlety of the gradient is absolutely perfect. My toothpick run was very successful, not a single bubble. I'm really pleased with this result. This semi-blooming technique is quite effective and the flowery look has come through. I love that the white in the center is really shining. This was my take on floral resin coaster. I hope it was a fun watch. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.